This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, October 18th show. Each week, I share expert advice and inside knowledge on how today's events in our local economy can affect your money. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast. To talk with myself or any of the awesome guests that I have in studio today, pick up the phone and call into the show at 1-855 400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And in studio now, Dan Edwards with the Eastside Real Estate Team coming in to visit me in studio for the first time. Dan, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tina, for having me. It's great to be here.
Excited to talk real estate with you. You're actually my neighbor almost in where your company is versus mine. And again, it's just exciting to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, downtown Bellevue's doing great right now.
We are doing awesome. And Dan entered real estate in March of 2006. His background in sales, business, and technology and enabled him to be a more efficient real estate professional. He loves real estate and people, and it was only natural that he would enjoy putting the two of them together. His vision is to ensure the process to buying, selling, or investing in real estate is a positive one. He believes in leveraging the power of strengths. The Eastside Real Estate Team's mission is to be professional, quality team with vision to build and strengthen their community by guiding their clients through the process of buying and selling or investing in real estate on the East Side. So Dan, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in real estate. But before we get there, let's talk about you. How long have you been in the real estate industry? I know since 2006, but talk a little bit about your experience.
Well, you're a numbers girl, so you can do the math. And it's 8 years. I'm working on my 9th year.
Awesome.
And it's 9 years of interesting stuff if you kind of think back over what we've seen. So yeah, it's been great. We've seen the ups, we've seen the downs, and the ups again.
Exactly. It's fun how it just kind of does that up and down, up and down. Lots of experience that we have for sure. So what about your story in the business and real estate, Dan?
Well, why I love being in real estate really comes down to the interaction between families looking for a place to live. Mm-hmm. One great way to explain that is through stories. And you know, I had a couple who they basically spent 30 years in a property in Sammamish, and they looked at what they could do to divide that property up. Got it ready to go. We got that property sold to a developer, and they were able to pay off their home and actually buy their dream home in Camano Island. So those kinds of stories are really why I like being in real estate.
And I like how you mentioned that because it is about stories. And I think too much in our industry, we don't take time to share those. And it's an emotional thing. It's the biggest purchase that a buyer is going to make, or a seller, the biggest sell that they're going to have. And so it is so important to share those stories. What is your areas that your team covers, Dan?
So the Eastside Real Estate Team works as far north as Mill Creek, as far south as Kent. If you go over to the east side, it's probably like North Bend. And but we really, really like to focus on the east side. And that's Kirkland, Redmond, Issaquah, Sammamish, and Bellevue.
So we know real estate is definitely location, location, location. And every location is different as far as what's happening in the market. Right just in the east side, what are you seeing happening right now, Dan?
Yeah, it's been an interesting last 2 years. I track the numbers all the time. I look at what the median home price is doing. And it's funny, it can be very different from Bothell than it is from downtown Bellevue. Yep. So you really have to pay attention when you're consulting with a seller on how to target their, position their property for success. So one of the things we look at is months of inventory. And that's an indicator of whether or not we're in a buyer's or a seller's market. So if you look at the Bellevue report for September in 2014, for downtown Bellevue, they're at 3 months of inventory. So what that means is if no new home were to go on the market, in 3 months, they'd be out of inventory. So a balanced market's 5 months. So we're still in a pretty strong seller's market in Bellevue.
Okay.
But if you go out to Bothell, there's a little bit more competition. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later because we've got a lot of builders out there putting a lot of new inventory on the market.
Yes, yeah. So what about the fourth quarter and home sales? What do you see?
You know, Tyler stole a little bit of my thunder, kind of talking about how things are going with regards to the fourth quarter. And kind of the heading of my talk today was, selling in the fourth quarter. And it's much like a Okay, I'll use a football analogy. Some people may be paying attention to football this time of year. That's one of the things I love about the fall. But the fourth quarter can be a win for a lot of people because of some of the things that Tyler already spoke about. There's fewer buyers out there, so the sellers can optimize. They have serious buyers, ones that are looking to do it. We know that traffic slows down around the winter time, and by definition, that we look at the numbers, and from December, January, and February, that's when the traffic slows down. So there's still time right now. Buyers that are looking for a place to spend for the holidays are looking to buy in the next 45 days.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So Dan, many say that spring is the best time to sell. So why not wait till spring?
Yeah, and that comes to the competition aspect.
Yep.
As a lot of people are thinking, okay, at the end of the school year, we're going to sell our house. You as a seller now are competing with a lot more buyers than you would be if you were selling right now.
So what can you do to get your home ready to sell in time for the year?
All right, so this time of year, it's a little different. And actually, I think it's a good opportunity for buyers to see what it's like to live in the Northwest this time of year.
Yep.
So as a seller, you really need to take some time on the outside of your house to make sure that the leaves are raked up, to make sure that the gutters are cleared out, to make sure that the windows are cleaned, right? Because the windows are going to let the light into the house. From the inside aspect, obviously the same thing, staging a house, cleaning a house, making it look spot ready. Like when you go to sell a car, you're going to have it detailed. So on the interior of a house, you're going to do the same thing. One of the bonus things you can do at this time of year is get up holiday decorations.
Yeah.
It's about connecting with those emotions. As somebody's looking to buy your home, they want to feel like they can spend and enjoy the holidays there.
And I think sometimes, that a seller really doesn't think about it. These simple things, how could they make such a huge impact? But put yourself, I always say for a seller, put yourself back in your buyer's shoes because you were once a buyer. And it really is all about the emotions that you feel for that house. So all these little things make a huge, huge difference. So why even hire an agent in the market if it's hot? Now, I know, but you hear sellers,
Yes.
you hear them thinking about that why even do it?
Well, first off, what I just talked about was kind of, here are some things you need to do. That's the tip of the iceberg when it comes to working with getting your home ready and getting it on the market. But more importantly than that, you have to take a snapshot from what a buyer looks to get if they're working directly with a seller. So if there is no advantage of having an agent. And essentially what that comes down to is that buyer is looking for a deal. So there's two things. The buyer's coming in looking for a deal, and you're doing all the work. So the best thing to do is to sit down, consult with a professional, and see what you can do to maximize the sale of your home.
Totally agree. And there's a lot of work in the whole process, but I think people forget about the contract and all of the stuff that happens that once you actually get that contract together, to make sure that you're maximizing your price. And I think that's a key thing. Maybe you can sell your home for yourself, but can you actually maximize the price? And then once you've got that buyer, you've made the right decision, you got to actually get through to closing, and tons of work that your real estate agent does during that time. So Dan, if I have a seller that's listening to the show today and is thinking maybe they want to sell their house, they're not really sure, or it's going to be a while out before they would sell it, how much time do they need ahead of time that they really want to connect, give you a call to talk to them about that process?
Well, Tina, like Tyler, I too look at myself as more of a consultant than a salesperson. So reaching out to an agent, a lot of people are very apprehensive of doing that because they don't want to talk to a salesperson.
Yes.
They want to have somebody that has their best interests in mind. So what better time to do that than when you're thinking, hey, what is going on with the value of my house?
Yep.
Not, oh, okay, it's time to sell. Now, who do I find? It's really a great idea to kind of reach out, find somebody that's educated on your market, find out somebody that's educated on what it takes to sell a home in any market, and then get their advice.
Makes total sense. And just remember the 80-20 rule, that 80% of 20% of the agents are doing 80% of the volume. And if you look at what that breaks down to how many transactions that they're actually closing on an annual basis, if they're not in that percentage, is kind of a scary thought. So you definitely want to work with the best of the best. And that really is what my show is about, is bringing experts in every arena regarding money. And I've got two of them in here on real estate. So I highly encourage for you to pick up the phone, give the show a call at 1-855-400-1150, or go online to themoneyhour.com if you miss any of the show or just want to listen listen again to the segments. I do podcast and stream all of our shows right online. So Dan, I know you've got an amazing team behind you, just as I do for my mortgage business. I'm a real believer in team to maximize that high level of service. And so what does your team do differently in getting homes sold?
Great question, Tina. So, I looked at real estate when I got in, 8 years ago, and I saw that there were a lot of agents trying to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
They were helping people buy homes. They were doing the marketing, doing the accounting, doing the transaction coordination. And I've seen a lot of people do it really well, really well. But the one thing that I saw and I recognized is that most businesses out there have people segmented into their strengths. And so it made a lot of sense to me to surround myself. And it kind of goes back to what my grandfather said. He said, find people that do something better than you and have them on your team.
Exactly.
So that's what I've done. I've assembled some of the best on the East Side to help our buyers and sellers buy and sell real estate. Yeah. So one of the things that's unique about it is we also include an in-house, it's what we call an inside sales representative. And their job is to actually, for our listings, they're calling outbound. This is kind of something that's unique to the Eastside Real Estate Team, is they're calling around our clients that are selling properties, and they're informing folks and looking for a buyer specifically for your house. So it's very proactive. It's not kind of sitting there putting a sign in the yard and just
waiting for them to come.
That it sells. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's being proactive.
And that's awesome. If you don't have a team, there's not enough time in the day to do that. But when you have a specific person, and for me and my team, as you know, Dan, one of my core business practices is procrastinate, delegate. And it's not about I don't want to do something, but I'm not good at it. So I have to find people, as you said.
So one of your core practices to procrastinate?
Procrastinate, delegate. No, if I procrastinate, then I got to delegate. And where it really comes from is it comes from my strengths or my weaknesses, more important. It's recognizing the weaknesses and finding the people that you can add to the team that are going to do that job at a higher level than you could, because it's not one of your strengths, just as you do with your team. So I just think it's so awesome. So what about on the buyer side, Dan? What do you do differently on the buyer side with your team, unique to the industry?
Well, that's where really customer service comes into play. So we've received the 5-star in customer service award over the last 6 years. And what it means is those touch points is really caring for those buyers and putting their interests first. There's no real unique formula to it, but being able to have that focus that I don't have to run to a listing appointment.
Yes.
My only focus is to dig deep and find a property for our buyers.
That's amazing. So Dan, any advice that you have, most important advice that you have for my buyer that's listening right now, purchasing in the real estate market today?
For the buyer out there, the interesting thing is where rents have been and where they're going. So if you're actually buying property today, you can lock in your monthly rate, okay? Because when you sign that mortgage paper, that promissory note, you're signing in a 30-year note at a fixed payment. But rents keep going up and keep going up. So as there's a pullback in buyers going, we're tired of this competition, you now have an opportunity to get out there when a lot of people are just, we'll wait until January, we'll wait until March, to actually not have to be in this frenetic multiple offer deal situation. So meet with Tina, find out what you qualify for, and get at it.
And I love how you mentioned with the mortgage, with the fixed payment rent going up, because very rarely you hear people talk about the difference between rent and mortgage, and you kind of look at the rent payment versus the mortgage payment. But very rarely do I hear people actually make that point. Rent is not fixed, which means you can actually get priced out of being able to afford a rent. Yeah. And it's just amazing what's happening with these rates. So I totally agree. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to call the show at 1-855-400-1150. All of the experts that I have in studio here today would love to talk with you and help you through whatever navigation process that you're going through right now. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming into studio. Excited to have you back in, and just a real pleasure to have you here. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up next on the Money Hour, in your golden years, would you like to maintain your independence and age in place? Talk with an expert on how to help this happen, and I just happen to have him in studio. Aaron Murphy with ADM, empowering the mature mind, right here on 1150 AM at KKNW after this short break.